disruptive.
America that I fought.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Been a fantastic day so far. So switching gears from truckers to farmers, because farmers are also taking the step into combating the globalist agenda, and farmers being the one of probably the oldest occupations on the face of the earth is being threatened by the global occupation. We have seen protests in the Netherlands. We have seen what they're doing, the damages here in Canada, in the hopes of combating climate change. That's the excuse that they're using to basically take over these family-run farms that have been around for generations and for a long time, growing crop, providing nutrition, providing agricultural resources to our communities, to our grocery stores, and to our homes. They are now being threatened by people like Bill Gates. They are being threatened by the World Economic Forum to take over these farms so they can build factory farms, so they can build plant-based food. And as you know, the word plant-based is used lightly because the plant-based that they're trying to sell you with is not exactly where the plant is coming from, as they say. So here's what's making huge headlines across Europe, and they're trying so harshly to hide this away from North America, even though it's happening here in North America. We know that Bill Gates has bought the most farmland here across the United States, across into Canada. We have seen, the statures of Justin Trudeau raining havoc against farmers here in Canada. So we know that all farmers alike are getting screwed over by this globalist agenda of taking down our agricultural system. And the news media can't really hide it anymore. So ABC News finally came out and says farmers block road access across France to protest low wages and countless regulations. French farmers are staging protests across the country and in Brussels against low wages and what they consider to be excessive regulation, mounting costs, and other problems. So the reason that they're putting all this restrictions, why they're putting regulations, why they're doing all this is so that they can undermine the farming industry, so that people don't have the choice. They're forced to sell their farms. They're forced to sell out to these private equity firms that are going to buy up the land, and they're going to exclude the agricultural industry. So they're doing this purposely to undermine farmers and the industry of farming. And I have huge amount of respect for farmers and people that work out in the fields, because they are doing the most work for the average community. They're the ones that are producing, agriculture and crop and fruits and vegetables and meats and cheeses and dairy and grains to provide and serve and feed us in the regular community. They're, the farming community is attached to every other sector in the world, and it's one of the oldest professions to this date that's being undermined by a globalist agenda. So it says French farmers are staging protests Wednesday across the country and in Brussels against low wages and what they consider to be excessive regulation, mounting costs, and other problems. Roadblocks are spreading in many French regions one day after a farmer and her daughter died due to a traffic collision at a protest barricade. Farmers have been turning road signs upside down to protest what they argue as non-essential agricultural policies. Some were planning to protest Brussels, home to EU headquarters, where French Farmers Union Rural Coordination called for a demonstration against the ever-increasing constraints of European regulations and ever lower incomes. The protests are the first majority challenge of newly appointed Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, who took office 2 weeks ago, and his government, Attal, met with farmers' unions representatives on Tuesday. Following the meeting, Agricultural Minister Mark Fensno promised to make new proposals to respond to the crisis by the end of the week, including regarding food prices and simplifying regulations. Armand Arsenault, head of France's major farm unions, FNSEA, said his organization would release a list of 40 necessary measures later on Wednesday. Speaking on France 2 television, he said the protest movement was aimed at getting quick results. On Tuesday, a car carrying 3 people ran into a barricade of straw bales in the town of Permis in the Aja region of southwestern France. A 36-year-old female farmer was killed. Her 12-year-old daughter died later in hospital, the local prosecutor said in a statement. So, the farmers are fighting back. And if you know anything about French or European nations when it comes to protesting, they are kind of the role model of how to take action, take drastic action when it comes to an overextension government. So here's, for example, the Vigilant Fox points this out. He says, "Holy S, holy shit." Literally, French farmers, like their German counterparts, because they're also protesting in Germany, by the way, are also fed up with crippling globalist policies in the name of curbing climate change. Thousands of farmers demonstrated today from Occitan and Toulouse. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing these French names. And dumped more than 100 trailers worth of manure and waste. So you want take a look at this. This is in front of a government building where they're taking tractors and saying enough is enough with your shit. Literally. That's incredible. That's incredible. I don't know what that sign says. Someone has to translate. I know here in Canada we both speak French and English, but I didn't do well in French. I know basic words. I know bonjour, comment ça va, très bien, merci, beaucoup. You know, an average an average tourist amount of French words and verbs and vocabulary, but other than that, I don't know jack squat. Um that's incredible. And this is that's just, in parts of France and Germany, but we've also seen the Netherlands. They mentioned about Brussels that there's, these rallies, these protests to counteract the globalist agenda, all in the means of combating climate change, which just goes to show you how much of a scam this is, because you're trying to combat climate change by taking down the most environmentally conscious occupation. Because if anyone understands the environment more than anybody, it's farmers. They need to understand the environment. They need to understand climate change. They need to understand how the earth and the sun and the wind and the soil operate, because it affects their business. It affects their livelihood. They need to understand how nature works. So you're combating the most climate conscious occupation in the hopes of stopping climate change by a bunch of jet thug enthusiasts. These are private jet owners that fly off to country after country and burn oil just for fun of it, and they're combating the most eco-conscious occupation on Earth. That's how I know this is a scam. That's how I know deep down the whole thing is a complete, utter scam. So, here's also, this is just a lineup in Germany, and you can see here. Let me turn down the video because I think there's a copyright song on this. But look at this. These are all John Deere tractors lining up and blocking down an entire highway to protest against the removal of the agricultural industry in European nations. And this is all This is all in part of people like Bill Gates who have been buying agricultural land for a while now, not because he suddenly got interested in farming and wants to, get his hands dirty. No, he is far from it. The reason he's doing it is because he wants to invest in the takeover of the agricultural industry and turn it into a cesspool of factory farms, plant-based food, which is all synthetic. It's all created by toxic chemicals injected into you and feed you a bunch of poisons and then cash in on the markup. That's the intention of all this. And that is why farmers who have been rely on this industry for generations. These are all, family farms that have been around for centuries, that have been passed along generation after generation. They're the most eco-conscious occupation in the world. This is why they're fighting back. This is why they're rallying. This is why they're doing the blockades. This is why people should be taking notice of this. They've been hiding this for so long, the mainstream media. And finally, people like ABC that we just saw the report there had to finally come forward, because it's not just happening in Europe. It's not just one country that's dealing with. It's every country that's doing this. The United States is feeling the burn. Canada's feeling the burn. The only reason that we're not seeing this in our countries is because we're not seeing the demonstrations in European nations. We're not seeing the potential that we could be doing. Just like how the truckers had the potential to stand up against the mandates in Canada on a cold, winter's night in January for weeks. We could be doing this to protect farmers, one of the most, noble professions for the community. And this is just how impactful it is. I also just want to take a moment to rehash this. We've shown this before, but this is a farmer from Ontario, a dairy farmer, that came on social media and made a viral sensation by documenting how the regulations has forced his dairy farm to dump out the excess milk that they're producing. Normally, when you're producing over your quota, you're able to sell at a cheaper rate because you have overstock. You have you have a bit of more supply, and you need more demand to meet up with the supply. So you're able to sell it at a cheaper rate. But because of the regulations, because the coming down on farmer and the farming industry, this is what an Ontario farmer had to say on social media. Because of these regulations, he had to dump out the milk that he was producing. So take a look at this.
We're here at Given Goes Farm in southern Ontario. We milk about 260 cows. Right now during the winter months, you milk quite a bit more milk because the feed is very consistent. And if you do a good job, you will produce quite a bit of milk. So, but right now we're over our quota. It's regulated by the government and by the DFO. But the problem is what they don't understand is millions of people look at this milk running away because it's the end of the month. I dump 30,000 liters of milk. It breaks my heart. I will show you. By the way, this here, Canadian milk, it's $7 a liter. When I go for my haircut, people say, wow, $7, Jerry, for a little bit of milk. I say, well, you have to go higher up because we have no say anymore as a dairy farmer on our own farm because they make us dump it. And no matter how we stand up, so this time I'm going public. I want the people to see the pain that us growers have of 365 days. As a little boy, we grew up on a dairy farm, came from Europe, work, and here we are. This is what's happening.
So what he's saying there, and what's devastating, is that farmers don't have a say in their own product anymore. And that is the heartbreaking scenario that's caused a lot of this and what's led up to the farmers retaliating against the globalist policies, is that corporations, these big monopolies, take over these farms, do factory farming, and farmers that are producing crop and producing dairy and producing their product don't have a say anymore about their product. They don't have a say in pricing. They don't have a say in control. They don't have a say in quota. They don't have a say in anything anymore. And they're still getting undermined to the point where they're forced, because they don't have the money to operate. They don't have the financial stability as they once had to operate these farms. They're being told to sell out. They're being told that the only option is to sell their place and sell their farming and no longer, be part of the industry. And that's when, you had billionaires like Bill Gates that drop in, buy up all these farms and do the worst of the worst. I mean, Bill Gates is introducing mRNA technology to animals. You think he's buying up farmland to, be down the dirts and care so much about growing things? No. He wants to inject vaccine technology into animals, that even if you're not injected with the COVID vaccine itself, which is very safe and effective, you're going to get it no matter what. Because it's going to be in your food. It's going to be in your vegetables. It's going to be in the air you breathe. It's going to be somewhere down deep inside of you. You are going to be clustered by this horrific technology that's being forced into you by nefarious schools like Bill Gates, that's buying up all this farmland and producing plant-based goods, which, plant-based goods is not the plant that you're thinking of. Unless you're thinking of like factory farming and, chemical plants, then you're definitely on the right board. But that's why we have to step up, and I support farmers, and I support the protest that's going on in France, and I just wish we saw more of this here in North America, because here in North America, they're also getting screwed. They're also getting the burden of, just getting screwed over. Like, this is an Ontario farmer. This is here in Canada. And I just think the reason we don't do it, the reason we haven't followed the footsteps of our European brothers and sisters over there protesting, is we don't see the potential. We don't see that we can rise against, that farmers can stand in solitude, just like we did with truckers, just like we did with any other organization. We could all stand together as working class people to rise against the authoritarian thugs of the globalist leaders that are raining havoc against us. So kudos to them. I support 100%, and let's keep on, the good fight, because farming is a noble institution that we don't want to see dying off. You're talking to the most eco-conscious people on Earth, and they're being destroyed in the hopes of combating climate change. That's just the most evil, awful scam that I've ever heard of when it comes to a plan to take over and dominate over the industry, your food supply, and everything.